not to come out here. Do you guys want to start giving a big round of applause for Max and Toby? Let's make them think there's like triple the amount of people. You can do louder than that. Just one more, like, as loud as we wake the mummies up that they have buried under here. Did you get some other mummies buried? One more time for Max and Toby from Lost in Space. The mummies. The mummies. Good morning, fellas. Is Ogden a little bit better than being Lost in Space?
Just a smidge.
So you guys, for some of the people who were here yesterday, there's going to be ample time. If you have a question, we're going to try to get everybody in. So what I like to do is start on one side and move to the other, and if you think of something in between, then we'll come on back. Does anybody have any questions for Max and Toby right now? You do.
This is a heavily CGI'd show. When they put you against a green screen, do they give you some kind of idea what you're acting against? Both of you?
Well, they do. They normally have a kind of digital sketch of what you're looking at, and some of the artwork is incredible. The CGI team, Sean Maxwell, are just amazing, and so they always turn up. All of the directors are very, very prepared, and so they have like these sort of sketches that you can look at. They go, look, this is what it's going to look like when it's fully rendered. And they also have, if you're doing an action sequence and it's CGI, they have like little kind of videos with slightly stiff versions of us doing whatever is, so they're really prepared, and the special effects team and the directors and everybody else kind of work in this very seamless way. So they'll tell you what's going on and help you imagine it.
Thank you. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's art. Like Toby said, everyone on the production is super prepared. It's for the first season in the beginning, I know we were still figuring out, the tone of the show and stuff. So there would be times when you would go in and you would have to imagine what would be there. But definitely for this past season that we filmed, every time they had something to show you.
Yeah, because you're always with the robot, and is he always there, or is he a lot CGI?
Yeah, so the robot's a combination of CGI and practical effects. The practical effects aspect of it is that there's like a suit type of thing that we have a gifted physical performer in, and he really sets the tone of the robot, and then they go back in and they change it with CGI and they make it seem more like metal. And then other times, when the robot has his forearms and is in a scary killer mode, that's completely CGI.
Thank you.
This guy. No. Wow. How old are you? Like 35?
14.
14? My goodness. So that's kind of an interesting aspect. I know your background is the theater. Do you draw a lot on your experience with the theater when you're doing CGI? Are they correlating at all? I mean, just in the sense that it's...
Yeah, I mean, it's always, look, it's all about, acting is about imagining. Acting, is imagining, empathizing, but it's all kind of the same muscle, really. That's what it comes from. And doesn't matter whether you're on stage imagining that there's, I don't know, an army on the horizon over there or something, or whatever, or whether you're on a film set going, there's there's a spaceship coming towards us. It's the same. It's using the same muscle.
I think fans, we have this idea of like a stick with a tennis ball on the end of that.
That's kind of close. And sometimes it's like a green screen, and they have different tone green kind of X's and marks, and they go, okay, you see the third X from and it's very simple. actually very simple, and it's just, and for us, it's a very simple leap, actually. Once you've made that leap, it's not rocket science.
I am curious though, and I don't want to put you on the spot. Could you point to that muscle that you were talking to earlier?
If Zach was here again,
he is that muscle.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions in this general area? Well, right there, sir.
What was the most challenging scene in the show for you guys to film?
I think the most challenging scene for me was in the first episode. There's a scene where I'm in a tree and there's a robot about to kill me. On top of that, there's fire, we had to go back and film that about 5 times over the course of the first season, which was about 7 months. So the first time we filmed outside, the second time inside, and then just kept going outside and inside. And on top of that, going back to the tennis ball and a stick, they didn't have a ginormous robot on at the other end of the tree. They had a guy standing below me with a tennis ball, just waving it around, the tennis ball and a stick, waving it around. And we had our first AD, who has a very, very strong New Zealand accent, going, and the robot is about to kill you. You are very afraid.
Okay, that is rocket science. I think like the worst, or the most difficult, challenging experience was being stuck in a spacesuit, suspended by wires for about, I think it was about 4 days, with Ignacio, who does not stop talking, in my ear, and there was nowhere I could go. I couldn't escape it. And I was stuck there for hours on end, just suspended on these wires, and trying to look like I was floating in space, which is actually really difficult. I was just like, because it is really uncomfortable, because you've got a jerk vest on, which is like this very tight harness, and then they attach. Then you've got all the rest of the gear on, and then they attach these wires to the jerk vest. And then you're suspended, so it puts everything in, depending on what angle you're on or where the wires are, it puts an enormous amount of pressure on parts of your body. Because, you're playing, there's no gravity, but you're actually experiencing a lot of gravity. And so you're drifting across to kind of go and catch hold of some part of the fuselage or something. And you're literally going purple in the face, going, and on top of that, you've got Ignacio just constantly talking. And no, I love him, but it was challenging. It was very challenging.
Did you have a question right there?
As a fan of the original series when I was a kid, I haven't made the jump over to it's Netflix. I haven't made the jump yet. So, should I?
No, you don't have enough time. You don't need any more hobbies.
I don't. All the time in the world.
You guys, that's an
Well, I
interesting.
mean, I'm not here to sell Netflix to you. But the thing is, what I can do is I can say, I think you'll probably enjoy the series. If you're really stuck on the original and the tone of the original, then you might kind of be disappointed because it's not the same thing. But it's the same, what's very clever is they've taken the essence of it, which is this kind of, without being too fancy about it, it's basically taking a domestic situation, a family, and it's transplanting it into this extraordinary situation. But yet the same parallels are there. So there's this slightly ironic thing of going, this family is in jeopardy, lost in space, but yet they're still going through the same rites of passage that any childhood. So there's that kind of sweet thing, but also they're going through the struggles that any family goes through. I think the original was this apple pie, very innocent, American, and that very much speaks of the time that it was made. And it was almost like a sitcom in space, whereas this is much more, they could die, but at the same time, you know, for example, for my part, John Robinson, there's this dysfunctional relationship that he has with his son. He doesn't understand because he's been away a lot in the army, and so he's trying to find his son again. And it's about you know people who are fallible, like any family, parents, fallible parents trying to be better, and children, you know, growing up, and but it's in space.
Exactly.
With a chicken.
You want to add some of that next?
Yeah, and also, if it's something that, you know, you can't have the original series without the actors in the original series, and something that I know a lot of the original fans take comfort in is the fact that they were very much a part of our imagination of it. You know, me and Bill became really close. We bonded over music, and you know, Marta, who played Judy, and Angela, who played Penny, and Mark, who played Don. They've all been very heavily involved in our show.
So on that, Max, and just kind of with both of you guys are taking something really iconic and you're bringing it, like you're pointing out, into the modern. It's a futuristic movie, but you're bringing it into modern times, and we're far past the era of apple pie and, you know, Leave It to Beaver and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But here you guys are taking on iconic roles. Like, everybody's heard the phrase, "Danger, Will Robinson." You're Will Robinson now, man. Like, did you guys find it kind of fun to interact with some of the older generation and like this lady pull her on board to the new angle that you guys are taking on the story?
Yeah, I mean, I think people can look. I think to revive series that are in the past, you have to have a good reason for doing it. Otherwise, it's just pointless. It's a pointless exercise. I mean, there are constant revamps of old ideas. You know, a lot of the time because there are no new ideas. And so it has to be a good reason to do it, otherwise it's just going to be empty. But I think at the moment we need some positivity. We need something, what I love about the heart of the show is about, as I said, it's about people, fallible people trying to be better. And I think we can all identify with that. And I love the aspiration of the children. It's aspirin, you know, and that's so important at the moment. And the aspiration of the children, which they're these kids who are capable. You know, they're really physically and mentally capable. They're shown to be capable, and you know, they're put in these dangerous situations, and they have to troubleshoot their way out. And they're having to use the stuff that they have learned to solve these situations. And I think, you know, we live in a time now where our children, I mean, I'm a parent myself, where our children are so coddled and we're so risk-averse, we sort of, you know, and they're perhaps not able to, you know, to do, you know, to be in situations that they have to, you know, troubleshoot out of. We protect them very much, and it's great to see these kids, you know, solve it for children, hopefully, to see these kids solving these situations. So it's taking something that is, it's just a good idea, you know, that I think, and it's bringing it now where we need a bit of hope. I mean, there's a lot of very depressing TV out there, which a lot of it's really good. I mean, I'm a fan of you know, quite a few series they're quite difficult to watch at times. But it's great to have a family show which is complicated and not sort of like saying life is all wonderful and innocent, but it's also saying, you know, it's taking that and going, but we can be better and we can do better. And I think that's an important message at the moment.
Well, taking like those really big concepts, and we spoke about it a little bit on Friday. How many, you guys are a family, do you guys watch Lost in Space together? So, how many, do you guys watch Lost in Space together? Think about how rare and unique an opportunity that is with the series. That mom and dad aren't in this room watching a TV show, and the kids aren't in another room watching the TV show. And for some of us, that was our childhood. That was, everybody got together to watch something. So you guys get to be a role model for families.
Yeah.
Like, is that something you're conscientious of? Is that something that you guys think of while you're acting about?
I mean, yeah, I'm a kid, obviously, so,
Well, that's still debatable. I think you're gonna love it, and you know it. No, sorry.
so me and my parents, and I have a younger sister, you know, before Lost in Space dropped, we found ourselves, I would be in my room watching on my phone or an iPad, and my sister would be watching something by herself on Netflix, and my parents would be watching something, because on Netflix there wasn't anything that all of us could watch. It's either really little or very old. And something that we thought was really cool when we were making Lost in Space was that this is something families can watch together. This is something that, and that was what was so cool about the original, that it takes you back to a time where families could sit down and watch something together after a long day. You know, I heard my mom telling me stories about how her and her brothers would watch things together. And that's what's so great, I think, about Lost in Space, is that it really brings people together.
I also, it was interesting, I was talking to, I think it was one of the showrunners who was saying that they got, because Netflix gives you very little information about what the shows, you know, they have all this information about how many people are watching it, how successful it is, all that stuff. But they don't give much of that information out. They're quite sort of mysterious about it. And but one piece of information that they did give out was that it had the longest completion rate of anything that they have, because normally people binge whatever series they have in a day, 2 days, maybe a week at the outside, whereas this commonly was not completed for months. And it was because families were finding times where they could all sit down and watch it, which is difficult. You know, when you just try to find the opportunity where everybody can sit down. And I found that really lovely, because it was also, obviously people wanted to watch it. It wasn't like, oh, we watched it while you were at work or whatever. They were like, don't watch it until we're all together, you know, because we want to complete it together. We want that experience together. And I found that really lovely.
Isn't his accent super cool? Is that, so you hear him as John Robinson with an American accent. Was that kind of interesting in between takes to hear him go back and forth?
I mean, yeah, I mean, Toby is so good at doing accents, you know, and we find ourselves, you know, goofing around sometimes and cracking jokes, so Toby's just really awesome to have on set. So I guess when we first started filming, I didn't really, I was like, oh, you're British, but you're also American. I was like, okay. And then then in the middle of it, it just kind of became a normal routine where you would have John Robinson in the middle of the scene, and then you would have Toby Stevens after they yell cut.
Man, there's just something about a British accent, though. I could literally just sit and listen to you talk all day. I've got a book in the car.
Well, I know. Yeah, but what was great with I think for both Molly and me having Max on set, because you know it has to be said that we are incredibly lucky to have the cast that we have, because everybody gets on incredibly well, and everybody's so good. You know, I just love working with all of them, especially Max. I mean, really, it's a real honor and a privilege. But also, what's great about Max was that, you know, like me and Molly, these jaded old turns who are turning up, kind of like just moaning about everything, going, oh God, this spacesuit is so uncomfortable. These hours are appalling. The food's terrible, and all this stuff. And then we had Max going, it's awesome! Everything's great! I got my spacesuit! I love my spacesuit! I mean, not quite so much now, but it was quite a long time ago since we did the first season. And both of us were kind of like, we've really got to be a bit more positive about all this. Just make us feel like really terrible.
You're carrying the whole production with your positivity, man. Great job. Was there did one of you guys have a question over here?
What was the easiest
I mean, Lost in Space, well, let's put it this way, space is hard, no matter where you
I'm looking
are.
at the back of your shirt and it says space ain't easy. And I think
Yeah, my shirt on the back says space ain't easy. But there was no easy or hard scene, but there was always those fun parts that took the burden off of some of your more challenging scenes. So anytime that I was able to be on set with, say, Toby or anyone in the cast, and it was just always a light, kind of happy scene when we were doing those family scenes. I would say those family scenes were probably not the easiest, but the most fun. Because you got to be with everybody. You got to be around people who you enjoyed being around.
Yeah, I think I have to agree, because it also centers the show. It gives it a kind of center, those scenes, because all the rest of it is all the action stuff. It gets very technical, and then when you get those scenes, it could just be a duologue scene where it's just the two of you, or maybe the three of you, but it's more intimate sort of stuff, where it has some emotional texture or something, where it centers everything, and you sort of make sense of everything else that you're doing. If it's just all of the technical stuff, all of the action stuff, all of the sort of space stuff, then you kind of lose, like, you do have those moments where you're pretending to float around in space. You got someone you're in, you go, why am I doing this? This is just ridiculous. But those scenes kind of like center you again. You go, oh, I get it, right? I get it. That's why I'm doing this.
Did you have a question next to your brother? You don't have to. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I'm sorry. What about you, partner? You raise your hand in the back.
What's the worst thing of being in an underwater scene?
Worst part about being in an underwater scene?
Underwater scene. Well, I think in the only experience I've really had of that was I did a film called Hunter Killer, which I had an extensive sequence actually. Although in the film it's so brief, I had this extensive sequence underwater where I had to swim underwater, and it was actually really horrible. Yeah, I remember watching movies when I was young, like way back with a series like Tarzan or whatever, where he's swimming underwater in a lake, or it's beautiful, there's sort of weeds and fish and stuff, and he's like swimming underwater. Or another one like I don't know, something that's set underwater and these people are swimming and you kind of go, oh, that looks really cool. And then when you actually get to do it, you go, this is absolutely horrible, because I did it at Leavesden, which is this massive studio where they actually built it for Harry Potter, and they built this massive, great big tank there for a big scene. Maxwell, or a lot of the kids here will know there's a big sequence which is underwater in one of the movies. So they built this entire stage just for that. And we were filming there, and it's heated, so it's like a swimming pool. But you're in scuba gear, no, I wasn't. I was in army uniform. I had all of this uniform on, and you're in it, and you've got all these scuba guys giving you kind of breathing apparatus. And I had to go right down to the bottom and then pretend to be sort of swimming along. And it was really horrible, because you can't see where you're going, and then you've got some guy sticking the rebreather in your mouth and everything. And then there was this bit where me and this guy had to be saving this guy. I'm dragging this guy along because I'm so butch and macho. And I'm saving his life, and I'm going up into this submarine, and it's this mini sub. And I have to go up through the kind of the entrance of this thing. And both of us, it's the first take. And they go, okay, so you have to swim along, and then you have to go up. You're dragging him along. And like pulling this guy was like killing me. And I was so I was so short of breath. And then we both went up through this hole.
and we both got stuck. Because we hadn't done it before, we got jammed in this thing. And both of us like, and the air, so the top of the water was like up here above our heads. And both of us looked at each other and went, and like went, what? And then thank Christ, we both got up through that. I mean, I don't know how, because he was a big guy and I'm not small. And, oh my God, it was horrible. So that's like a glimpse of filming anything underwater is just really uncomfortable. I mean, I remember there's a friend of mine, Luke Arnold, he played Silver in Black Sails that I did, and he had a whole extended sequence underwater when the ship is sinking and he's caught in the sinking ship and he's trying to find a way out. And I just remember him going up. I remember going in the next day, and his eyes were still bloodshot from the chlorine, because they have to really chlorinate the water, because it's not like a hygienic swimming pool. You're on a set, and it's like, so his eyes were just and they couldn't film with him that day. It was just like, forget it. It just looked terrible. So yeah, it's pretty. Have you had any experience underwater filming?
I've not had any experience underwater, but I did that space stuff and the stuff that Taylor did. When she was swimming underwater.
Yeah.
It's the same apparatus that they used to do the zero gravity in Lost in Space, because we didn't use the underwater tank for Taylor. We used a 2-point harness, and she would have to control herself like she was underwater.
Because that was so cool. It was all CGI, wasn't it?
They CGI'd all the water.
Well, I wish they'd done that.
No bloodshot eyes in that situation, right?
Near-death experiences.
Any questions up this way? Okay, there's a lady right behind you, and we'll go with her, and then...
So, Lost in Space is very CGI heavy, but what about the locations? Was all the locations, the mountains, the snow, was that all CGI, or did you actually go somewhere? How are the locations?
In the first season, we were told that it was going to be about 50-50 studio and on location. It ended up being 80% on location and 20% in the studio. So we would go to the top of mountains and the top of glaciers, and so we were definitely going out into the wild. And what I found really cool is that the Vancouver crews worked so hard that even when we were on these locations, they would be climbing these massive trees and hanging green screens from the trees, between the trees and stuff. It was insane. I can't tell you much about season 2, but we definitely got to go to a lot of these cool places like Iceland and stuff.
Cool.
So, just to clarify, the location stuff on the mountain, that was real. And the space stuff, that was CGI.
Yes. I get the joke.
Sorry. All right, the lady.
Yeah, I have a question for Max, because you told me yesterday that you like Harry Potter. And I want you to play Sorting Hat and sort the Robinson family into the Hogwarts Houses.
So what do you say? Which houses?
Which houses?
Yeah,
Each Robinson?
Exactly.
All right. I would say Maureen's definitely a Gryffindor, and so is John. They're kind of like the brave, fearless leaders. I would say Will is, or Maureen's probably a Ravenclaw. Very analytical.
I'd say that, yeah.
Will's probably a Gryffindor. No, thanks. And then.
Oh, did you say? Oh man.
Penny is most likely. I would say Penny's most likely either a Hufflepuff or a. I would say Hufflepuff for Penny, and for Judy, I would definitely go with a Gryffindor.
Okay.
And then Dr. Smith's Slytherin, obviously.
Yeah. Did you need any interpretation on houses?
Harry Potter.
The only reason I've never understood, so you're all picking teams, everybody gets picked, and then there's this other group, and they're Hufflepuff, right? Yeah. And she's like, all right, you guys can be on my team, so it's always crazy to me that people identify with Hufflepuff.
It's actually having been to British public school, which is private, that's the opposite of what it means here. It's a private school there. You are separated into what are called houses. So they are, and frequently they are actual separate buildings where your dormitory is, where you sleep. So each house will have a name, and then you will always have these inter-house competitions. So it's very much based on that system, because it is like this fancy, essentially, it's like this fancy private school for magicians. Yeah.
That sounds much cooler than my public school.
Out of curiosity, that's a great thing. Some of the kids in here would want to know more about that. What's school like on set? What's your average day like as far as that's concerned?
Well, so back home, I go to my normal public school in Chicago. I get to walk to school, and but while on set, my teachers back at home, they send me the work that they're doing in school, and I keep up with that while on set. So I'm working and doing an incredibly, like, say, an emotional scene where I'm being chased by 5 angry, giant 8-foot-tall monsters, and then I have to go and do algebra. So it's definitely a challenge, but it works itself out, and I think it's very good how serious they take school on set. It's the studio teacher is one of the most important people on set, in my opinion. So I'm lucky that I'm able to do school while able to do what I love.
So when you go back to public school, are things a little bit different with your friends at all?
The friends that I've known for a long time, they couldn't care less that I'm Danger Will Robinson. They still give me a hard time, but there was definitely a shift with the people who I wasn't so close with, who were kind of mean, and then of course they want to be your friend sometimes, but you just gotta know who your real friends are and be nice to everybody, but just know who your crew is.
So have you started going to dances yet? Is that at least a little easier? Was there any more questions right in this area? In the back, Your Royal Highness.
I do actually frequently feel homesick. I mean, I am very privileged to have worked in some really amazing places, very beautiful, and also get to travel a lot extensively because of my work. I think I do honestly realize how very lucky I am and privileged, because I was reading in an article the other day which said at any given time, this is in the UK, I don't know what the figure is in the US, but in the UK, only 2% of the acting profession is working. So I'm very privileged to be working for a start. The fact that I'm working on this kind of project, or the kind of projects that I've been doing, is really lucky. And also to get to travel. But the thing is, I have a family and I have a life, and it's really hard sometimes when you're sitting in a hotel room or a kind of little flat that you're renting in some, foreign corner of the world, and it's not your home, and you're not with the people you love, and it does get a bit like, at times you just go. I remember, particularly at weekends, I remember, just sort of like going, what am I doing? I'm on my own. I should be with my family, and that can be hard, it's trying to find that balance where you can work, you do the work, but you also have your family life. It's becoming very difficult at the moment, and because of this explosion in kind of content, digital content, really, like Netflix, Hulu, all of these, Disney's about to crank up, Apple. It's this explosion in material and filming. A lot of the professionals now, filming in all these different disparate places where you're having to travel far from home. I mean, Max is away from Chicago, his home. There are Molly lives in California, although she's from Vancouver, but her base is in LA. So we're all pretty much, everyone in the cast is all the way from home. It's just more difficult if you have the family and stuff, where you just feel very dislocated sometimes from that.
I mean, yeah, I'm lucky because being a kid, I have to have a parent on set with me. So at any given time, I have my mom or my dad with me. So that's always nice to have. And but I have a younger sister at home, and we're best friends. So that's always tricky, having to leave her. But this past season, I was really grateful because she actually came up and visited for about 2 months. So she became really close with the hair and makeup people on set. And you do feel homesick. This cast and crew have really become one big family for me. So I have a family in Vancouver, and then I have a family in Chicago. And of course I miss my family in Chicago, but I also have that, safety line, that home in Vancouver.
Great answer. Are there any questions over here? Yes, sir.
After this season, are you guys planning to do any more seasons? And if so, how many more do you think would go on after this one?
Well, again, I mean, like Netflix is with the viewing figures, we're the last people to know, I think. I mean, I really genuinely mean that. I mean, sometimes, people will message you or ring you and say, "Oh, I just saw your show's been renewed." You go, "Really? Oh, right. Okay, great." So we don't know. I mean, I think it would be very strange if they made 2 and then didn't make any more. Considering also it's been hugely successful for them, very, very popular, and it's they don't have renewals. I think they're expanding all the time, and they're but the family genre is not well serviced at the moment. I don't think in digital content. I don't think there are that many shows where you go, "Oh, yeah, let's all sit down and watch that." I mean, I know with my kids watching. I try and watch some of the stuff that they watch, and I normally last about 5 minutes and go, "I've got to get out of here," It's just not for me, whereas at least this is something that everybody can watch together, and I'm sure there are shows. So I would imagine there would be a third one, but we'll wait and see. You can tell me when it...
And make sure you tag me on social media.
Yeah, exactly. Let me know.
Yeah, I was actually, funny story, I came to school one day, and our security guard at our school goes, "Oh, so Max, I saw your show is renewed." And I go, "No, it hasn't gotten renewed yet. We won't find out for like another few weeks." And then 3 days later, I get an email from our producer saying, "So we're going back for a season. We're going back for season 2." And I walk up to my security guard and go, "You knew before me."
What kind of insider info is he getting? Hollywood Reporter?
He's probably just reading
The janitor of your building.
Hey, Max. Pretty much. Exactly. Yeah. His uncle is in programming, right? Was there a question down here? Did I see a hand? Right there.
So what was the most surprising or unexpected thing that happened, or that you just kind of took you by surprise going into filming Lost in Space?
I think the thing that surprised me there, I mean, I am a sci-fi fan. I'm not all sci-fi. I mean, I'm quite. When I was a kid and I went to see Star Wars for the first time, and I went to go and see it when it first opened. That's how old I am. But I remember it totally blew my head off. I mean, I'd never seen anything like it. And I loved the kind of scale of it and the sets and everything. I was just like, oh my God. And then, and so I loved watching Star Trek when I was a kid, Space 1999. I'm not sure whether that was a thing over here, but it was big in the UK. And I loved all of that stuff. And then Buck Rogers in the 21st century. I actually turned on the TV last night, and they had it on. So it was a series in the 80s. That was so cheesy, but they had it on, and frustratingly, I couldn't get sound on it. Oh. So I ended up watching this episode because it was so nostalgic for me in silence, which was quite interesting actually. So I loved sci-fi, but then later on in life, when I sort of became Max's age, I remember going to see Blade Runner in an empty cinema in Guildford. Totally empty, nobody was there. It was a bomb when it came out. And again, it totally blew my mind, but in a different way. Visually, it was sort of gorgeous, but there was a sort of, I could believe in it somehow. There was a texture to it where I kind of like, it was so beautifully thought out, visually and everything, and the world was so contextualized. I really kind of believed in it. And then I saw Alien and movies like that where, again, it had this kind of, it was centered in something that I could kind of believe in. The sets were real, it felt real. Not like these massive space operas, which I can still appreciate, but they are more distant from them now. I like those ones I can believe in, I can kind of, and so, in answer to your question, when I came on set, and I suddenly saw these sets, and the spacesuits and everything, and I kind of like went, yeah, I can believe in this. I can believe in a future where this kind of thing can happen, and I felt that they really put a lot of thought into the way they designed it. They designed it where they were kind of servicing a kind of aesthetic that was about imagination and about expansiveness and all that stuff, and escapism. But at the same time, it was couched in some kind of reality. And also just walking onto a spaceship, that was such a kick for me. I know it was for Max, but it was just so amazing, like walking onto these sets and going, I'm in a sci-fi show, I grew up watching these things. I'd never imagined I'd be in one. And that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I grew up watching Star Trek and watching Star Wars. My parents actually used Star Wars as a parenting tool. They would have me watch it.
The Force. You will go to bed. Maxwell.
They would have me watch it, and they would go, you see, don't go to the dark side, like Anakin. Don't go to the dark side. And so walking onto the Jupiter was definitely like, wow, I feel like I'm in the Millennium Falcon. I feel like I'm in the Enterprise. I was like, oh my gosh. Also, something really cool about it is when we started Lost in Space, in a way we didn't know what we were getting into. We were kind of accepted into this family of sci-fi, and you go to these cons and you realize all the sci-fi shows, whether it's from 50 years ago or from 2 years ago, they all know each other, and they all are kind of like a family. And that was what was really cool for me, is I get to see and I get to talk to these heroes of mine, and in a way we're all like a family.
So guys, we're getting close to our time. So if there's we got maybe time for 2 more questions. Does anybody? Right there.
What's your favorite episode in Lost in Space?
So far, in the first season, because I can't really talk about the second season because it's top secret. But in the first season, I think the episode that I personally enjoyed the most was when I got stuck in the tar pit with Maureen in the car, and it was, you know, we both think that that's it, that only one is going to survive, and I really like playing all of that because for me, I'd been up to that point, I'd been a bit rubbish as a dad and as a husband, and that you guys know that there's all this stuff between us that is unresolved, and at the end of that scene, you know that they both actually really love each other, and you know that they're good people, and like I said earlier, they're just trying to do the right thing, and just they happen to both survive, but that's the way they're brought together again. I thought that was a really cool idea, and it was really fun playing that with Molly.
For me, I have like a list of top 3, but my favorite one of that 3 is probably episode 10, because it kind of, well, first of all, it wrapped everything up in a really cool way, and second of all, I got to work with a really amazing director. His name is David Nutter, and I learned a lot from him. He's a director on Game of Thrones and stuff, and all those things. Maybe you've heard of Game of Thrones. He really taught me a lot, and I got to work with him on that. And also episode 10. For Will, it seemed like the first part. It seemed like the part where you really got to see an older Will Robinson. Throughout the season, it had been leading up. It had been leading up to this big moment for Will, you know, throughout his arc. And in episode 10, when he makes that, I don't want to spoil it if anyone, like if you haven't seen it, but yeah, close your ears. But when he really makes that big leap for his family, and you know, floating off, it really showed how much Will had become a young adult throughout that first season, and it really sets things up nicely for the second one.
Last one, right there.
For the series Lost in Space, I know you've both done like multiple movies and stuff. Was this your favorite season or thing that you filmed, or were there other ones that you enjoyed?
It's so funny because people say, what's the best thing that you've ever filmed? What's the best character that you've ever, you know, played? And it's so difficult because each of them are, you know, there have been jobs which I'd rather haven't done, you know, I mean, I'll be honest with you. But there are a lot of jobs I'm really glad I did, and a lot of parts that I'm really privileged to have played. And I think John Robinson is one of those characters that I feel really privileged to have, you know, this experience. But it's a totally unique job. I mean, you know, each of them are. And they require very different things from you, you know, as an actor. You know, and that's what I enjoy about the job. You know, I don't want to continually do the same thing. Years ago, I did a Bond film and I played a baddie, and I was quite young when I did it. I was like 29, 30, I can't remember, but I was still quite young. I mean, you probably think that's really old, but it's quite young from my vantage point now. You know, the thing is that when I did that, after I did that, because I'd done a lot of theatre before that. I was classically trained, call it classically trained, but I mean, I did a lot of theatre. And then suddenly I was cast as a Bond baddie, and I was just basically seen as a baddie. And I was like, you know what, that was really cool doing that, but part of me really regrets it because I'm now stuck, you know, with being baddies. And I don't want to play baddies for the rest of my life. I don't want to play just one part because I'm not that kind of actor. So it took me a long time to get rid of that. And so it's funny because I go to a lot of Comic-Cons and people go, I loved you as Gustav Graves. And it's very mixed for me because in the moment I go, that was great that I got to play that. But at the same time, I know that it did me no favors as an actor for a long time. And it took me a long time being able to come out of that and be able to do other stuff and for people to accept, you know, that I was not that same part. And so I feel privileged to have done that. I really enjoyed it, but it was very different from what I do now. And each role that I play, the ones that I really enjoy playing, they require different things from me because I like being able to do different characters and different things. So I can't really say which is my favorite, but this is definitely up there, you know, because it's such a unique experience. It's such a fun show.
Yeah, for me, I agree with Toby. You can't really decide which one's your favorite because everyone's so different. But there are definitely those which you feel really grateful to be a part of, and I'm definitely very grateful to be able to be Will Robinson. You know, I got to become close with the original Will Robinson, Bill Mooney, and he was so kind and so generous, and we really bonded. So I feel very grateful to be a part of the Lost in Space family. So yeah, definitely being Will Robinson has changed my life for the better, for sure.
On that note, can we get a big round of applause for both Jenkins and Will Robinson? There's mummies downstairs that can't hear you. I think that's going to go over there. Thank you guys for coming out for this. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.